So thank you all for joining us for this webinar to discuss the Consumer Products Reporting Tool for the 2023 Consumer and Commercial Products Survey. I'm Lucy Negrete, and I will be moderating today's meeting. So on the panel, we have Gracie Wong and Austin Henry, who will both be presenting today. Kyriakis Kyriakou, Muslim Hussein Marty, the manager of the implementation section, Ravi Ramalingam, the branch chief for the Consumer Products and Air Quality Assessment Branch, Vernon Hughes, assistant division chief for the Air Quality Planning Division, and Michael Benjamin, the division chief of the Air Quality Planning Division, Air Quality Planning and Science Division, excuse me. So before we get started, I'll go over some housekeeping items and provide some information on how public participation will be organized for today's meeting. We will be waiting until the very end of the presentation to open it up for questions. So to make a verbal comment, we will be using the raise hand feature in Zoom. To do this, if you are using a computer or tablet, there is a raise hand button. If you are calling in on the phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. You may raise your hand during the meeting, but we will wait to answer all questions during Q&A. You may also use the Q&A box to enter in questions as they come up during the presentation. We will address these questions first during the Q&A portion. Please note that the Q&A box is different than the chat box. The chat box will be disabled for this meeting. When the comment period starts, the order of comments will be determined by who raises their hands first. I or my colleague Dan Garrett will call each commenter by name and then activate each commenter when it is their turn to speak. For those calling in, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. I'd also like to ask everyone to please state your name and affiliation before you speak. Also, all slides for the Consumer Products Reporting, the Consumer Products Reporting Tool, instructional documents, and modules for the CPRT and CPRTF can be found on the Consumer Products website. I'll now go ahead and turn it over to Muslim for his remarks.
Thank you, Lucy. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the second webinar on the 2023 Consumer and Commercial Products. We appreciate your engagement and the valuable feedback provided after our first webinar on October 29, where we introduced the proposed categories and our selection methodology based on the OFP ranking for all categories in the consumer products. In today's webinar, we have 2 presentations. In first presentation, we will address key comments and questions raised by stakeholders during and after our October webinar. We will also announce important updates in response to the feedback received and outline our plans for sharing data summaries before finalizing the new survey result. In the second presentation, we will cover the new survey process, including key upgrades to the survey tool, submittal requirements, and where to find instruction and videos on completing the survey. As Lucy mentioned, following the presentation, we will open the floor for Q&A session to hear your thoughts and answer any additional questions. And I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank my incredible team for their hard work, from developing a new ranking methodology to designing tools and resources and optimizing the process. Their dedication has ensured the survey runs as smoothly as possible for everyone involved. I'm truly grateful for their commitment and effort. Thanks again for participation and ongoing engagement throughout this process. If you have questions or need further assistance after the webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out. And now I'll hand over to Gracie to begin the first presentation. Thank you so much. Gracie, please.
Hi, Muslim. So let me just share my screen. So today I'll be going over our response to comments that we received and updates to the October 29th webinar. So as an outline of what I'll be going over in this presentation, I'll be going over the summary of comments received and our responses, data summaries that we will be releasing after the survey, and announcing the upcoming toxicity ranking methodology webinar. So a summary of the comments we received on the 2023 survey categories includes the anomaly of year 2020 sales, and as a result, advocating for the removal of this year from our survey. Extension requests for the deadline for survey submissions. Concerns over how the programmatic VOC equivalency ratio was used. If and how freight and transport adjustments were applied. How fragrance speciation will be handled in this survey. Clarification on category definitions and concerns around surveying over-the-counter or OTC drugs. So first, regarding the anomaly of year 2020 sales, we considered that the COVID pandemic impacted consumer product categories in terms of consumer behavior and also supply chains. And so for reporting year 2020 sales, we considered the pros and cons of this. And so pros includes it would support a more robust assessment of category baseline sales activity. And cons includes that it would require significant resources from survey respondents and also CARB staff. And this would justify the extension of additional survey response time. And so a major update that we decided is that the reporting of sales for the 3 years, 2020, 2021, and 2022 is all no longer required. And only reporting of 2023 sales and formulation is required in our survey. So now regarding the deadline for the survey submission, since the reporting of sales for these 3 years is no longer required, this would result in significant savings in time and resources. And so now we also want to include the next 3 categories in our ozone forming potential ranking order. And this would increase the number of categories we can find reductions, allowing for a smaller change in reactivity in any single category. And it's still within our optimal range of categories to survey. And so this includes antiperspirant, liquid fabric softener, and dual purpose air freshener / disinfectant aerosol. And additionally, we've also decided to extend the survey deadline by 1 month to April 8th, 2025. So please note these new updates to the survey process. And regarding programmatic VOC equivalency, we got some comments that VOC equivalency may not be reflected appropriately using a single factor, and that each category should be reviewed individually. So I just wanted to go over that VOC equivalent emissions is just a way for us to convert the language of ozone forming potential to VOC equivalent emissions, which is in line with our state implementation plan. And so as a summary of what we did is we took the total 2023 VOC emissions and the total 2037 ozone forming potential. And we used this to calculate the consumer product programmatic ratio between VOC and ozone forming potential. And we got 0.351. Then we used this ratio to apply to each individual category's ozone forming potential to calculate the VOC equivalent emissions for each individual category. So this consumer products programmatic ratio is applied already to each category's individual ozone forming potential. So each category is already being looked at individually. And in the end, we have the total VOC emissions and total VOC equivalent emissions being equal to each other. So looking at the calculation, each category's VOC equivalent emissions is calculated by each individual category's ozone forming potential multiplied by this programmatic ratio. And in the end, the total VOC emissions would be equal to the total VOC equivalent emissions. And so the inclusion of this category ozone forming potential part of the equation results in a re-ranking of the significance of categories based on each unique category's ozone forming potential. And the purpose of this programmatic ratio is just to convert the VOC emissions to VOC equivalent emissions so that these total VOC is equal to total VOC equivalent emissions. And for any more clarifications, we have developed a new technical memorandum on this VOC equivalency posted on our website on the CARB Consumer and Commercial Products Survey webpage. And regarding freight and transport, and if it was applied to the categories, the freight and transport adjustments are included in the 2015 data summary that we used to select the 2023 survey categories. And we determined the freight and transport adjustments based on scientific literature review. And we discussed this with stakeholders, and this is incorporated in the 2020 Consumer Products Emission Inventory Update. And so we will not be revisiting any freight and transport adjustments before launching this survey. And any changes in freight and transport adjustments will be considered if it's justified by new studies and research prior to updating the 2023 survey categories emission inventory. And regarding how fragrance speciation will be handled in this survey, we had a focused fragrance survey conducted during the last 3-year survey, where we discussed with fragrance formulators, agreed on a fragrance speciation, and incorporated this in our 2020 Consumer Products Emission Inventory Update. And so we will not, the fragrance formulator information collected during the 2023 survey will be used to update the Consumer Products Program database. And we won't be requiring fragrance speciation in our survey, only contact info, which will be shown in the next presentation. And regarding definitions for the 2023 survey categories, for previously regulated categories, we would use regulatory definitions that are in Article 2. And regulatory definitions come into existence upon regulation. And for previously unregulated categories, we would just use their survey category name since they do not have explicit regulatory definitions. In some cases, there may be further clarification on a survey category in the exclusion definitions of some survey categories. But if there's any questions, please reach out to us and we will be compiling and releasing specific clarifications on our webpage. And regarding over-the-counter OTC drugs, the FDA's active pursuit of regulatory updates of over-the-counter drug product categories does not negate CARB survey pursuit. And in our CARB survey, we will be developing our regulatory strategy. And we are surveying categories with the highest ozone forming potential that would have the largest significance in our inventory and modeling efforts. And so we're not necessarily regulating all of the categories in our survey. And in developing our regulatory strategy, we consider the regulatory and technical ramifications of dual regulations by FDA in our regulatory strategy evaluation. And for more specific comments, products that are dually regulated as cosmetics and over-the-counter drugs still need to be reported in the survey. So an example would be anti-dandruff conditioners would still need to be reported as conditioner without styling claims, and body cream or lotions with sun protection factor or SPF would still need to be reported under hand and body conditioner, cream, lotion, and moisturizer. And lastly, I'll be going over the data summaries that we will release prior to finalizing our results. So the first data summary would be pretty simple. For each survey category, we will have the names of companies and the names of products. And preliminary reports will be released for feedback with final reports published after reviewing comments. The second data summary will be more in-depth, including for each survey category, the number of reporting companies, number of reported products, the sales weighted average VOC content, their speciation, emissions, sales weighted average reactivity, and their ozone forming potential. And our third data summary will be focusing on PCBTF survey categories, which is parachloral benzoyl trifluoride. And we will be releasing the mass of PCBTF in each category and the number of products containing PCBTF. So here I am presenting all 37 selected categories for the survey again. And just to note that these 3 categories at the end, liquid fabric softener, antiperspirant, and dual purpose air freshener / disinfectant aerosol are new categories being added. And additionally, only 2023 sales and speciation data is now required to be reported. And I will now hand it off to my colleague Austin, who will go over the specifics of the consumer products reporting tool.
Okay. Thank you, Gracie. I'm just getting my screen up here. Okay. All right, it's up. And I'm in the room here with everyone. We're sharing a microphone, so I'm not on camera right now, but you guys will see me during the Q&A. Again, my name is Austin Henry, and during this portion of the webinar, I'll be covering the Consumer Products Reporting Tool, or the CPRT, as well as going over a little bit of the Consumer Products Reporting Tool for Formulators, or the CPRTF, which is really just a smaller version of the CPRT. So first, I'd like to outline this presentation. First, I'll be covering major improvements to the survey. Next, I'll be covering who must complete the survey, how to obtain the survey tool, the required submittal information, the instruction manuals and video modules and their location, and then an overview of the CPRT and its features, as well as a little bit on the CPRTF. And then lastly, the survey timeline. So first, the major improvements to the survey. I just want to note that each thing I talk about on this slide right here will be covered in more detail later. So first off, this is an Excel tool, hopefully designed to be as user-friendly as possible. We have included the capability to search and check your chemical ingredients that you report. And that is going to be driven by the Chemical Abstract Service Number, or the CAS number, if you're familiar with that terminology. Next up, this survey does have a series of validation checks and an error report, which will help you fill out your survey and kind of learn what we're looking for in your report. And it's just going to guide you throughout the survey process. And again, I'll cover that in more detail later. Next up, one major change I want to note is that this time around, CARB staff will be reaching out to formulators on behalf of the responsible party. In the past, we had responsible parties reach out to their product formulators. But this time around, we're going to be doing it for them in the form of delivering them the CPRTF. Again, there'll be more information on that in future slides. And then last but not least, we will be using Kiteworks for the submittal process. This is a secure and encrypted mailbox submittal system, and both product formulators and responsible parties will be using it to submit their data to us. So with that, who must complete the survey? I've already talked about this a little bit, about responsible parties and product formulators. I just want to note here on this slide that the definitions for the responsible parties, which I'm about to go over, are available in our regulation and our instructions if you wish to refer to them in further detail. Both of those documents are posted online on our website. So for responsible parties, this is going to be the company, firm, or establishment listed on a label of a consumer or commercial product that was sold or supplied for use in California during calendar year 2023. Foreign-based companies that sell consumer or commercial products into California are required to complete the 2023 survey. If a label lists 2 companies, firms, or establishments, the responsible party is the party that the product was manufactured for or distributed by, as noted by the label. On the other hand, product formulators are going to be companies, firms, or establishments who are identified by the responsible party to provide product formulation on behalf of a responsible party. So in the case where a responsible party does not have the formulation information themselves, the product formulator will be supplying that to us via the CPRTF. I just want to note that there are a few other what we'll call secondary formulators as a part of this survey. And I want to note that these ones will not be surveyed. The fragrance formulators and the solvent manufacturers are not going to be surveyed. However, we will still request contact information from them, from the responsible parties and the product formulators. There'll be a little more information on that in further slides as well. Okay, next up, obtaining the survey. For responsible parties, the survey is live as of December 3rd. You can download this from our website now. We are requesting that the responsible parties email their product formulators and CC our 2023 survey inbox by January 14, 2025. This is just going to allow product formulators some time to get ready for when their survey comes in, and also help CARB establish contact with them ahead of time. Product formulators, as I've mentioned a few times, you're going to be contacted by CARB and provided customized surveys via the CPRTF. So you can expect to receive your surveys after the corresponding responsible party has completed their submission to CARB. So next up, the required submittal information. So I just want to show these 7 terms here real quick. These are terms you're going to see throughout this presentation, and these represent the 7 sheets that we're going to ask responsible parties and product formulators to submit depending on who has the product formulations. So I'm going to go over 2 basic cases here, and then I'll describe it in a little more detail. So the basic case by default is the responsible party has all their product formulations. Via the CPRT, they would fill out all 7 of these sheets and provide their data to us. In the case where they do not have their product formulations, they fill out just the relevant information that they are able to complete, submit it to CARB, and then using that information, CARB is going to generate a unique survey in the form of the CPRTF with only product names and formula names for those product formulators. So that'll be delivered via the CPRTF, and then the product formulators would fill out the remaining formulation information. So I just want to note that those are the 2 most extreme cases, one where the responsible party has all their formulations and one where the responsible party has none. Of course, you can mix and match. And I just want to note that in the cases, for example, where there's more than one product formulator, all information is going to be kept confidential, except for product names and formula names per product formulator. So if you have 2 product formulators, the product formulator is only going to receive the product names and formula names that they need to provide formulation for. That applies to them. They won't receive information from anyone else. And vice versa, we're not going to be providing that information from product formulators back to the responsible party. So now one other piece of information I want to note about the products we're asking for is that the products should fall into the selected product categories as Gracie presented earlier. Those are also available on our website. And just one final note, products that do not contain VOCs must still be reported. And then on this slide, I just want to show everyone that the information manuals and the video modules we've prepared for both the CPRT and the CPRTF are available now on our website, along with an FAQ document. These instructions, the instruction manual, is a very detailed set of instructions that you can use to refer to specific descriptions of anything that is discussed in the tool and anything that you see while filling out your survey. The video modules, on the other hand, are step-by-step examples that you can use to follow along with if you get stuck while actually filling out your survey. And then, of course, any questions you have, you can always reach out to us via email as well. Okay, so for this next portion of the webinar, I'm going to be going over what the tool actually looks like, how to use it, and what you can expect us to request of you. I just want to note, first off, that again, this is an Excel based survey. So since it has macros enabled, you're going to want to use the desktop version of Excel, not the browser version. If you have any issues with this, though, just please reach out to us and we can help you resolve them. One thing I want to note here on this page right here is that the start page is what you'll see when you first open the Excel tool. And on the left, you can see this legend here that is color-coded. That'll help you kind of be guided throughout the survey process, with green information being required and yellow information being conditionally required. There's a few other color codings in there as well. And then on the bottom of the page, we've went ahead and listed out the different Excel sheets that you can expect to see when you are filling out your survey. Again, the CPRTF is a little bit different, but it's just a little bit smaller version of the CPRT. So a lot of this information is going to apply to both tools. And then one thing I want to note is there's a menu button on the start page that's also available on all the other pages. This is just how you're going to navigate to some of the important features such as importing and exporting data. Okay, next up, I'm going to go over the responsible party page. So I'm going to start going through all the pages where you are going to be entering information. So the responsible party page, you will not be able to proceed without first filling out this information. A little pop-up will come up and it's going to pop up this form. So in all instances, or in almost all instances of the sheets on the tool, there is a form where you can fill out data for one row at a time. I just want to note that later on, I'll discuss importing and a few other features, such as you can just copy paste data in or manually enter it. But for the responsible party and the certification pages only, you do have to use the form to submit it. That's just because they're important forms and they only have one row of data that we're requesting. So on this responsible party form, there's 4 tabs. You're going to want to make sure you fill out the information on each one. And then any required information is denoted by an asterisk, as you can see here. So this first page is just your company name and contact information. The next tab would be more description about your business. The next tab would be the parent company information, if you have it. And then the last tab would be the comment field. With the comment field, this will show up a few places in the survey tool. You can use this box to just give us any additional information that you think might be helpful to us when we're interpreting your survey. The survey doesn't ask for everything that may paint a complete picture of your products, so please feel free to use it at your discretion. And then on each one of these forms, I just want to note that there is a save record button at the top right, which you can use to submit your data. So after hitting that save record button, we've went ahead and pasted an example here. This is a snip of what some of the data would look like when you fill out the responsible party page. So you can see the columns highlighted in green are mandatory, such as company name and first name, last name. And then there's some optional columns that are highlighted in yellow. Next up would be the product list page. So the product list page has a couple fields that are pretty important. So I'm going to go over these ones in a little bit more detail. But again, I'm showing the form here first, and then I'll show a snip of what some of the columns filled out on the tool actually look like. So first off is product name. Product name must be unique. This is how we're going to identify your products. So if you have 2 products that are very similar, such as, let's say, generic spray 5 ounces and generic spray 10 ounces, just include more information from the label to make them distinct. So I would name them as such: generic spray 5 ounce and generic spray 10 ounce. Formula name, this can be repeated. So in the previous example I mentioned, we're not going to ask you to repeat formulations unnecessarily. So for the generic spray 5 ounce and 10 ounce, they only differ by size. So you can reuse the formula name here and then only have to report it once. Next up, the who provides formula. This is the formulator field. So if the responsible party is providing their own formulas, they would enter self here. And if they have a product formulator, then they would enter the product formulator name here. UPC. So in the past, we've asked for a couple different variances of UPC. This time around, we're only asking for the UPC-A format, the 12-digit format. We understand that not everyone will have this. So if you do not have this, you can simply enter NA into this field. And then the label file name. So please provide a descriptive label name related to the product name. This is going to be similar to the formula name field, where if you are repeating a formula name, then you can go ahead and use just one label in that instance. And I'll show an example of that on the next slide as well. And then one last note, the product list page does also have 3 tabs. So you're going to want to make sure you fill out all the information on this form. The next tab would be the general information and size. This is where you can input your category code and other information such as product density. And then the last tab, the fragrance dilution and comment. This is where you can input your fragrance name and your fragrance formulator name if you have them for your products. So next up, this is that example I wanted to show you of information actually on the product list page. This is just a few of those important columns. There's more columns, but they don't all fit on one screen. So I just wanted to highlight again that products that share formulas only need to submit one label. So in these three groups sets, you can see here, for example, in the first three rows, product A, product B, and product C all have the same formula name, formula example 1. Therefore, in the label file name, they all just have product label as label name. So if the formula name is repeated, you can use one label to represent that whole formula. And again, I'll discuss more in detail on the next page about providing the formulations for those formula names. So this product ingredients page is where you will be entering that information for your formulas. So you can see on the leftmost column here, that formula name shows up first. This is how we're tying your formula name to your actual ingredient information or the formulation. On this page, we're asking for information such as chemical name, CAS number, the weight percent of the ingredient, and then if you have hydrocarbon solvents, we're going to be asking for the trade name, manufacturer name, and the bin number. So I just want to note here that if you're filling out your survey via the CPRTF, the sheet is going to look exactly the same. It just depends on whether the responsible party had the formulations or not. And then for the product ingredients page in particular, there is no form to fill out product ingredients one by one. Instead, there's an entire optional page called the Enter Formula page. Clicking the Add Formula button will take you to the Enter Formula page, or you can just click it in the Excel. You can just click the tab down there in the Excel sheet and it'll take you there as well. This Enter Formula page is, again, optional. It'll allow you to fill formulas one by one. And while I did mention that you can import data, we do recommend that you import or you add your first products and your first formulations manually or using the forms, just so you can get a hang of the rules that are requested in the survey. You wouldn't want to import all of your data and then find out that there was one simple error that occurred in the whole data set and then have to go back and fix all of it. So to fill out a formula here, you're going to select a formula from the drop-down list, which is populated by the product list tab. You can hit the select chem button if you'd like to select chemicals from our library that's internal to the tool. You can search for a CAS number on this field as well, on this form, sorry. And then you can select the chemicals that you'd like to use. So in this example, I selected fragrance and water. Then the next thing you're going to do is ensure the total weight percent adds up to 100%. And then once your formulation is done, you can go ahead and hit Save Record, and this will automatically populate on the Product Ingredients tab so long as no errors have been reported. If the errors show up, you just need to fix them, and then you can go ahead and hit Save Record again, and it will populate the Product Ingredients tab, which I'm about to show here. So on the Product Ingredients tab, you can see that the basic ingredients of just water and fragrance have been populated. And I just want to note here, I chose fragrance specifically in this example because fragrance is an aggregated term and can be reported as a single ingredient. This has been mentioned a few times, but I wanted to really point this piece of information out because we've had a few questions about it. So if you have two products, let's go back to another basic example, perhaps generic spray lemon and generic spray lavender that only differ by fragrance, you can still just provide one formulation where the only difference is that the internal speciation of fragrance is different, but since you report it as an aggregated single ingredient, it'll just be one formulation. So we encourage you to not speciate out fragrance. It'll save you time. And there are a few other grouped aggregate terms that you can use. Those are all detailed in our instruction manual posted online. So please refer to that if you have any further questions. And of course, you can always reach out to us. Okay, so the next three tabs, and stop here for just one moment and discuss product formulator, fragrance formulator, and solvent manufacturer. All three of these are, again, those secondary formulators as I referred to, and all three of these forms are going to look very identical. It's just contact information that we're requesting from these three tabs. However, the product formulator one is a little bit special because we will be surveying product formulators if an RP does not have ingredient information. So product formulator must be identified and they will be surveyed via the CPRTF. Again, CARB staff will use the submitted CSV files from the responsible party to generate a unique version of the CPRTF that contains only the product names and formula names that need to be identified by that product formulator. Next up, the fragrance formulator tab. Again, as I mentioned, it looks almost identical to the product formulator page. It's just contact information. The only difference here is that the responsible party or the product formulator will be filling out this information depending on who is providing the formulation. So this will link to the product list page to verify that the name of the fragrance formulator matches the name of the fragrance formulator on this tab. And then just one more note, again, we do not plan to survey fragrance formulators. Solvent manufacturer, again, this is going to depend on who is providing the formulation. Either the responsible party or the product formulator will be providing this information to us. And then the manufacturer name is just going to need to match this company name field here on the product ingredients page and the solvent manufacturer page. And then again, we do not plan to survey solvent manufacturers either, just product formulators. Okay, so next I want to discuss importing data. So importing data is going to be really powerful here. You can import all your data at once, or you can import into just one sheet at a time. But there are some rules that I want to lay out for importing data. So first off, you can navigate to it through the menu button on any of the sheets and then click import data. The files that you use to import must be a CSV file, and they must match the headers of the sheet you're trying to import into. So the imported CSV must match the headers of the sheet you're importing into. If you do not have those headers, they are available on our website. You can also generate them yourself if you wish. And then one thing I want to note here is that importing data is not going to delete anything you've previously imported or manually entered. So again, I mentioned you can use the forms, you can manually enter data, you can copy and paste it in, or you can import it. Importing is not going to delete any of that data that's already present. And then now highlighted on the bottom, you can see the various tabs that you have the capability to import data into. So this is going to be the same for the CPRT and the CPRTF. Okay, last up, the last sheet we're requesting information for is the certification page. This page is just going to serve as an electronic signature certifying that all data submitted is correct and accurate. And this is going to be required by both the responsible party and the formulator. Okay, and so now we've moved on past the pages that are requesting information, and then this last page I want to cover is the validate survey page. This is going to be a really important page because it will detail to you any possible errors that have incurred while you're filling out your survey. If you hit the run validation report button, an error list is going to be spit out. So one thing I want to note is that your data cannot be exported until the validate survey returns no errors. I'll discuss exporting on a future slide, but I just want to note that this is optional. Exporting is automatically going to run this report. But again, we do encourage you to use this throughout the survey because let's say we go back and if you fill out just a few products and a few formulations at first, you can run the validation report, see what errors are present in the information you've submitted, and then resolve them so that you can resolve them before you import large data sets. If an error message says warning, then data can still be submitted without resolving that warning. And again, a lot of these error codes are just, they're pretty self-explanatory. They'll say like zip code is missing, for example. But if you have any issues, please feel free to reach out to us. And then one thing I want to note here is that if the user has a particularly large data set, or perhaps if you have an older computer, the validation report may take some time to complete. For me, it's pretty instantaneous, but I just want to note that in case anyone has any issues with it, just do not close Excel while you're running it. If Excel is still thinking, give it some time before you try and close it out. Okay, and one other feature I want to discuss that is new to the survey that is on the validate survey page is this chemical correction assistance checkbox up here. You can turn it off and on up at the top here on the validate survey page, and it's just going to assist with possible misentries of chemical names or CAS numbers. So what it's going to do is it's going to compare the entered CAS number and chemical name with those on the CARB Chem tab, which is another tab we're not showing here that you don't need to provide any information on, but it's just an internal library we have of some chemical names and CAS number pairings. If the entered values partially match, then the CPRT is going to attempt to present a list of potential corrections. So in this example, the user has entered carbon dioxide with a CAS number of 123. Now, carbon dioxide typically has a CAS number of 124389. So you can go ahead, click on that change and make the change if you would like to align your data with ours. It's really helpful to us for data processing if the data is aligned with ours. But I just want to note here that this is just a chemical correction assistance. It's not saying that the information you have entered is incorrect. Those of you who are familiar with chemical names and CAS numbers already will know that there are potentially dozens of chemical names and dozens of CAS numbers that are synonymous with each of these ingredients. This is just an attempt to normalize your data with ours. So if you do not find that the chemical correction assistance is useful to you, you can just go ahead and turn it off. And then one last thing I want to mention, this functionality is also available on the Enter Formula tab, but it's just for one formulation at a time using the Enter Formula tab. So it won't be as impactful as it is on the Validate survey. Okay, next up, exporting data. So again, you can navigate to the Export CSVs button using the main menu available on any sheet. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to automatically run the validation report. It's going to have a little pop-up there. And then once the report is complete and no errors are found, it's going to start exporting the data. So I just want to note here that once the export begins, the screen will start flashing as the export is being completed. That's just because the CSVs are being created and then closed. The CSVs will be created at a location of your choosing, but just don't be alarmed if that's happening. Again, if you have a large data set or an older computer, this may take a little bit more time. So just be patient while it's running and just do not close Excel while it's still completing. Once it's done, it'll say export complete and you can send your CSVs to CARB. One thing I want to note here is that we request you not to edit the CSV files in any way before submitting them to CARB, including the name of the CSV file. The survey is designed to have this information spit out in the format that we want to use. So if you want to change any of the CSV files, for example, we just recommend that you go back into your survey, make the necessary changes, and then re-export the CSVs. Of course, if you've already submitted your data to CARB and do want to make a change, just email us and we can resolve that for you. Okay, next up, the required submittal documents. So for the responsible party, it's going to be those 7 CSVs for the sheets that we covered in this webinar. I just want to note that the export will export every sheet, even if you don't have information on it. So please submit the entire package. It's just a way for us to check for completeness, even if, for example, you don't have any fragrance formulators. Next up, we're going to ask for label files. We will want the front and back of the labels. We will want them to be legible. We will prefer them in a PDF format. And we will also ask that all labels are compressed into a zip file. The CSVs don't need to be compressed into a zip file. If you do, that's okay. But at least for the labels, we imagine we'll be getting quite a few of them. So we are requesting that those are compressed into a zip file. For product formulators using the CPRTF, your submittal package will look almost the same, just without the product labels, product label image files. So you'll have these following 6 sheets that you need to export. And again, if you have any blank sheets, still provide them to us. Okay, next up, where to submit your data. So I mentioned earlier that we'll be using Kiteworks. All files are going to be submitted via Kiteworks. Again, it's a secure and encrypted mailbox software, both between you and us. And then all you're going to need for it is a valid email address. There's going to be no installation for this. All the files are going to be uploaded via the Kiteworks website. So again, no installation is necessary. For responsible parties, if you are completed with your survey and you need a link to Kiteworks, you're going to email us at our 2023 survey inbox to receive the link. We'll send you the Kiteworks link, and then you will be able to drop in your files into that folder. And then for product formulators, again, it's a little bit different. So we will we'll be contacting product formulators, and we'll send you a Kiteworks link to download your customized CPRTF. So since we'll be communicating to you via the Kiteworks initially, you can use that same Kiteworks location to upload your data. Okay, next I'll cover the survey timeline, just a little basic timeline here. Again, December 3rd, the survey was launched, and then the webinar is occurring right now. On January 14th, we're asking responsible parties to submit that contact information to CARB. And then on April 8th, this will be the deadline for submitting completed survey data for both responsible parties and product formulators. And there's a couple ways you can contact us. You can always subscribe to our listserv for announcements. You can request any survey related questions at our 2023 survey inbox. And then of course, our program related inbox is also open year round. So please feel free to email us there as well. I just want to say thank you guys so much for being here, attending and listening. We really appreciate your feedback and your questions. And I'll turn it over to Lucy to help us navigate through those right now. Thank you so much.
So before we go to questions, we had one more announcement we wanted to cover, so I'll turn it back to Gracie real quick.
Sorry, I was muted. So we do have an upcoming webinar on our consumer products toxicity ranking methodology. This will be in January 2025, and we'll be going into the methodology behind ranking our consumer product categories based on their toxicity. The webinar will provide an in-depth explanation of the calculations used to determine toxicity scores and how they guided the selection of categories for this survey. And we'll also discuss the program's next step regarding toxics, including plans for prohibiting PCBTF. And I'll hand it back to Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracie. So we're going to jump into the Q&A portion now. So we'll start with what's in the Q&A box, and then we'll go to raised hands. So first question we have is from Tom Green. So when we completed an ARE in 2022, we had aerosols and other products as an end user listed. South Coast AQMD had us go through all of the products to list the VOCs and figure out the emissions. Very detailed and confusing. So will the consumer product survey replace that process, or at least help us do that process? So I can't speak to that in particular, since we have no jurisdiction over how the air districts handle their emissions reporting. That is a separate process. The next question would be, what does division refer to on the tab to enter responsible party info?
I can take that one. I was actually just typing a response to you, but I'll just go ahead and read it out. So this may or may not apply to your survey. It's just where you can enter the division of your company if applicable. If you don't have a division, you can simply just enter NA there. And then if you have any further questions on any other fields, for example, you can always refer to our instructions as well, and you'll be able to see the definitions there too. Thank you.
The next question we have is from Nima Tulabi. So what if we have multiple formulas, albeit with minor difference for a given product?
So for that, it depends how minor the difference is. Our instructions have a pretty detailed description of what you need to do to satisfy the conditions to repeat a formula name. So there is a few aggregated terms where you can that you can use to basically not have to repeat a formula name. But if the variance is too large, then you will have to report the formulas individually. But again, just refer to the instructions there. And then if you have any further questions after reviewing it and it still doesn't make sense, just email us and we'll help you fill out that portion.
The next question from Amanda Swanson. If we have a product that is just a dilution of a super base, how do we enter the formula? Do we break down the super base components or just list the super base product?
Okay.
So
Okay. Am I unmuted? Okay, sorry. I should have said something before we muted. We were just discussing it a little bit. Could you please email us that question and then we'll get back to you with a more detailed response. We have a few thoughts on it, but we'll get back to you on that one if you could send it to our 2023 inbox, please.
So the next question is from Tom Green. Could CARB in the future actually help businesses by making a function that will create safety data sheets, or at least the applicable part of the safety data sheets from this data collected? And also, if this program in the future could recommend alternative chemicals that may work to lower emissions. Just responding to the safety data sheet question, that's not something we do here at CARB. We're regulating. And then in response to alternative chemicals, This is something that we usually come up in works with industry. So if you'd like to meet with us to discuss more, you can always ask or request a meeting from us, and we can discuss any possibilities with you on specific products at those meetings.
And then I'll just tag in a little bit here on the safety data sheets. While what Lucy said is true, we are not going to be creating them. That's not our realm. We are interested still in the data on them, and we've been toying around with different ways we can improve using that data. So if you have any advice or ideas, please feel free to submit those to us. We are still interested in some of that data, but again, we're not going to be generating that data or requesting it in this survey, I should note as well.
So the next question is from Elena Baduzzi. If the formula contains some amount of unknown, perhaps non-hazardous components that aren't disclosed on the supplier's safety data sheets, how is that handled when entering the formula? Is there a listing for unknown?
So I have two comments on this. First off, if it's like a really small, like unintended ingredient or something like that, then there is built into the tool a little bit of wiggle room in terms of like how small the weight percentage of an ingredient is. So you won't need to report like unintended ingredients. However, if this is like a major ingredient that you don't know the information for, please reach out to us when you're filling out your survey and we can help you with it because it'll probably be on a case-by-case basis.
So the next question is from Anonymous. Can you please go through how a manufacturer might handle trade secret ingredients within a larger formula? So like a manufacturer would have insight to full formula, but one vendor may declare one component as a trade secret.
Let's see, I'm not totally sure I understand the question, but if I'm interpreting it right, so one thing I'm getting hung up on is we have the product formulators, the terminology we're using, at least the product formulators who will provide formulations on behalf of the responsible party. And then we have manufacturers as well for hydrocarbon solvents. I'm assuming this is about product formulators. So that would actually be a good example there. A hydrocarbon solvent may not have the full formula and it is actually a trade secret, but you can still list out the name of that ingredient. And then if we have further questions about it, we can reach out to you and ask. But you do have the capability to just report the ingredient as is. And then if we have further questions about it, we're having trouble discerning what its actual makeup is, we'll reach out to you and ask about it.
Also really quick, I'd like to turn something back, the presentation back over to Gracie real quick. She has one more thing to show us for the upcoming
Sorry,
events for the survey.
I'm just gonna put the survey timeline on the screen because someone requested it to be on screen.
Yeah. Thank you, Gracie. Okay, so the next question is, how are chemical percent ranges reported? From John Nelson.
Okay. So I'm assuming this question is about instances where when you're filling out a formulation, the percent may vary depending on how it's filled, who it's filled by that day. We are not asking for ranges. We're just asking for the basically what you can call the generic makeup of the tool. So if you are a generic makeup of the formula. So for example, if you have an ingredient that ranges, let's give big extremes like 35 to 37%, we'll just go ahead and ask you to average it out to 36% in a case like that. But if you have further questions and maybe it's a more special case, please reach out to us and we'll help you resolve that.
The next question from Amanda Swanson is who uses the CPRT and who uses the CPRTF? So the CPRT would be for responsible parties. That's the manufacturer or distributor who is listed on the label. And then the CPRTF is for formulators. So when the responsible party fills out the CPRT, they may list formulators. CARB will then generate a custom version of the CPRTF to send out to those formulators. So that would be who would respond or fill out the CPRTF. The next question is from Gerardo Reyes. Are product label files limited in file size? So for your Kiteworks upload, you don't have a limited file size, it's unlimited. We just ask that you zip, that way it's easier for us to find the CSVs and they don't get mixed up with the file labels or the label files.
And that being said, any efforts you make to reduce your file size of your labels is definitely appreciated on our end as well. We're just looking for the front and back of the label.
As long as they're still readable.
Yes.
Yes, please provide legible labels. The next question is from Amanda Swanson. If we are the manufacturer of a product, are we the responsible party, product formulator, or both? So you could technically be both. If you are listed as the entity or company on the label, you are the responsible party. If you are also providing the formula, then you would be the product formulator. So in that case, you would mark yourself as self for who provides formula, and you wouldn't have to provide contact info for the products that you are the formulator of. Okay, so I'm gonna let my colleague Dan Carrot take over some of the questions.
Yeah, we're just gonna switch over and answer or let some of the attendees with raised hands respond. I see that Nicholas Georges has his hand raised, so I'm going to allow you to unmute now. You should be able to do that.
All right, Dan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you. And Nicholas Georges with the Household and Commercial Products Association. Thank you so much for today's webinar and the presentations. We do greatly appreciate it. We, greatly appreciate the responses to the comments that we and other stakeholders have submitted, along with the all the work that you have done in preparing not just the tool in this survey, but the instructions and the guidance that have come along with it. It's very detailed and clearly you all have put a lot of effort into this. So thank you for that. I have a few questions for you. So if you want me to go one at a time or ask you all together, happy to go either way. The first question I have is, there are going to be responsible parties that manufacture some of their products but rely on other formulators for other products. Is a partial submission acceptable so that they can get you the information by January 14th on the, for the products that they don't manufacture, and then complete the, I'll say the survey or at least another portion for the ones they do by the April 8th deadline?
Yeah. So I guess so to answer your first statement, well, we should do this individually because I'll have trouble remembering all of them, but I'll go ahead and answer that. So first off, that January 14th, we're just looking for the contact information. It's not like a formal submittal or anything like that. It's just for us to get the ball rolling between responsible parties and product formulators. So it's not a formal submission of a CSV or anything like that. And then on that note, what you mentioned about like a partial submission where a responsible party has some of the product's formulations but not others, that is definitely expected and standard. So for example, if you only have half of your product formulations, you'll fill out the entire survey for those halves of the formulations, and then for the other half you would just be providing the product formulator contact information. And once that gets submitted, we'll reach out to the formulators on their behalf, and they would provide the other half of the formulations themselves via the CPRTF.
Great, thank you. Now, during the presentation, you shared, I'll say, examples or guidance for stakeholders to submit, for certain product categories, what is included within a definition or category, and conversely, what wouldn't be. As stakeholders ask you questions about, what is, I'll say, kind of the guardrails for these product categories, will you be posting that online and sharing, responses generically to questions with stakeholders, and how will the broader industry, be able to learn from the questions that are being asked of you?
That's a great question. As we go through the survey and kind of get feedback on what questions we're receiving more commonly, we will be adding those to the FAQ page. So some of the more commonly asked questions have already been answered on there. And again, that's available on our website, but we will be updating that as necessary. For example, if we keep getting similar questions, especially important ones like definitions of product categories.
Now, for hydrocarbon solvents, I believe I had read while I was going through the instructions that if a responsible party has all the appropriate information for the hydrocarbon solvent, that they don't need to provide the contact details for the hydrocarbon solvent manufacturer. Am I remember that correctly, or do you want the information for each manufacturer and each material no matter what?
It may be possible that we wrote that in the instructions. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I will say that we do want the contact information no matter what. It's just for our own information purposes and to see kind of who the major players are. And then just in case we have some additional questions, but we will ask for the contact information at the very least.
Now for the contact information for the hydrocarbon solvent manufacturers, and I'm going to lump in the fragrance manufacturers as well. Is it safe to presume that information can be submitted to you by the April 8th deadline? You don't need that by January 14th?
Yep, that's correct. The January 14th is just to informally get the product formulators and responsible parties, get the ball rolling for both of them and us in terms of who we know needs to fill out the survey.
All right, I'm going to switch gears to the formulations now and the formulation names. From the instructions when selecting the formula name, it appeared that was going to be a drop-down menu once a formula name is created, and companies have to select the appropriate names. I would say, certain responsible parties are going to have a large number of formula names based on the various products that they manufacture that are subject to the survey. From our standpoint, there's a bit of concern with the drop-down menu because of how long those lists could potentially be. Is there another way that companies will be able to select the proper formula name other than the drop-down menu?
Yeah, so my preferred way of doing the survey when I've gone through practice runs myself is to do a few products in the initial bit, like maybe 3 or so, and then enter the formulations in for those using the enter formula page, and then run the validate survey button to make sure that there's no errors with it. And then once I've got the hang of what the format we're asking for is, you can just go ahead and import all of those formulas at once. So formula name, for example, basically any column on those fields will be imported in. So you can import all your formula names, formulations, products all at once. You don't need to use the dropdown. That's just if you're trying to do something individually. But for large batches of data, I would actually suggest that you stick to importing your data in.
And then I have one last question for you all. And again, thank you so much for your time in doing this webinar. There was chemical information on slide 27 of the second presentation. Is that information available in yes? So you have the chemical name and the CAS number here together. Is there is that exportable for companies to have in a table?
Yep, exactly. So actually you can see in that image there where it looks like 15 chemical names and CAS numbers, you can see that there's a CARB Chem tab, a CARB Codes tab, an NICS tab, and a Temp tab. All of those are available in the tool. They're just built-in static pages that you can't edit. So yeah, those are available for your viewing, both in the CPRT and the CPRTF. So if you want to export it, yeah, by all means, you can copy that out and save it.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Nicholas. I'm gonna mute you again. So feel free to raise your hand if anything else comes up. Let's move back to Lucy to handle a few more of the typed in questions.
Thanks, Dan. So the next question we have is from Krista Whaley. So my company is also just a formulator for private label store brands of consumer products. In 2015 to 2017, many of our responsible parties did not know about the survey, and they will want us to submit information for them. How do we get the CPRTF if we are not the responsible party on the store brands, but we know that we need to send you survey information?
So that's a great question. You're actually in a position to help us quite a bit here because we outreach to companies that we know need to fill out the survey. And then we're also trying to contact everyone who we haven't communicated with before. So if you know you have a responsible party, I would highly recommend that you begin contacting them now and asking about our survey and seeing if it applies to them. And then if it does, then they can go ahead and start working on their survey, and then you can start working on your portions as well.
So the next question is from Lisa Massaro Kustuch. Please put the time, oh, sorry. Yes, we did put the timeline slide back on the screen, but we can put it up again. Okay, so the next question is from Nima Tulabi. Is a request for more time. Just collecting labels and converting them into PDF format may take 4 months.
I'm wondering, could we maybe speak to the labels we want and what we don't necessarily need in all cases, because that might help.
So yeah, one thing to note there, that's a really great point, Robbie. So for example, there are a couple things that can help save some time on the labels you're collecting. If you're repeating a formula, let's say you happen to have a line of products that only differ by fragrance, then you can use one representative label there. Please refer to our instructions for some other ways you can group formula names. That'll greatly reduce the number of labels that we're requesting. But if you have any further issues or comments, please just reach out to us and we'll work with you.
The next question is from Amanda Swanson. Does clicking the export in the Excel form submit the data to CARB, or does it create a separate file we have to manually submit?
So clicking the export button is going to, it's right here are the, what Gracie's sharing on the screen right now are the pop-ups that are going to come up throughout exporting. But one thing that's not shown here is you're going to manually navigate through your file system and you're going to select a location where you're saving those CSVs. So those CSVs will not be automatically uploaded to CARB. You simply have to email us for a Kiteworks link if you're a responsible party. And then once you have it, you'll be able to just drag and drop those CSVs straight into the Kiteworks box, and that's how they'll be submitted to us. So simply by exporting CSVs, you will not have completed your submission to us.
So the next question is from Anonymous. For the January 14th formulator contact information, how do we submit that?
This will just be in the form of an email between us, you, and your formulators. There's no formal survey format there. It's really just to help everyone get acquainted with each other and everyone be aware that the survey is taking place and who needs to fill it out. So, and then I can see the next question, again, is addressing that. So there's no portion of the survey, just to be clear, that needs to be submitted by January 14th.
Okay, I'm going to quickly turn it back over to attendees who have their hand raised. So I see Eric Aquino, you have your hand raised, so we're going to unmute you and ask you to unmute yourself.
You should be able to unmute yourself now, Eric. Oh, but I see you took your hand down, so.
Okay. So we'll move back to the written in questions. So the next question from Anonymous, if a sealant or caulk does not contain PCBTF, do we still need to submit in the survey? If a product is a part of any of the product categories we've listed for the 2023 survey, even if it doesn't contain chemicals of interest or VOC, it does need to be reported. Next question from anonymous. We produce and sell our products, therefore we are a responsible party and also manufacturer. What do we choose on the survey? So since you are both responsible party and manufacturer, you'll be filling out the CPRT. You just won't have to do a separate CPRTF. You, for the who provides formula section, you will mark self, and you will not provide formulator contact information for the products that you provide the formula for.
And I just wanted to add one thing onto that. I like the way you phrased the question because I think it'll help others as well. What do we choose on the survey? So just to be clear, this is more of like a cascading effect. If you're a responsible party and you have the formulations for your products, there's nothing you need to choose. You just simply can start filling out the CPRT. The cascading effect I just mentioned is that if you have product formulators, that's what triggers the CPRTF being sent out. So if you're the responsible party, you can just go ahead and start already.
The next question from Rucha Keller, does 30207 category include face washes also? And I believe the response to that would be no. That would be hand and body wash. Yeah, that's body wash, mousse, gel, soap, foam, and scrub. That would not include face wash. Next question from anonymous. We are formulators for a number of paint products, which we sell to distributors in California. My understanding is that the distributors must register as an RP. How do we know how much of any given product they sold, and how do we know the VOC?
So again, you won't be registering as a responsible party. It's simply if you are one, you will fill out the CPRT. So please refer to our instructions on the website and our regulation as well, and that'll help you determine. If you don't know though, then please reach out to us and we can help you. But for the second part of the question, how do we know how much of a given product? How do we know the VOC? So the sales data you can request from them, but the VOC content, you won't need to know the VOC content while filling out the survey. You'll only just need to know the formulation. One thing to note again is that products with or without VOC content are still both being requested. As part of our QA/QC, we will be looking at the VOC content ourselves, but it's not something that we are expecting any of you to need to report to us or no. So no need to worry about the VOC content at least, although it is of course good to be aware for when regulation comes around. But thank you for the question.
The next question is from anonymous. What constitutes a styling claim on conditioner? Is frizz control a styling claim? It looks like my colleague Gracie Wong would like to answer this question.
Hi, so the other category that would be maybe overlapping with conditioner is called hairstyling product, I believe. And so that hairstyling product would be a product that is more used to sculpt your hair, and the more clear definitions are in Article 2. And so you can say that conditioner without styling claims is conditioner that you would wash out of your hair. So in this case, frizz control, if it's a frizz control conditioner that you would still wash out, it would not be considered a styling claim. The styling claim is more referring to if it's left in the hair and used to sculpt your hair for styling, if that makes sense. And I refer to the definition in Article 2 for hairstyling products for more clarification.
Thank you, Gracie. So the next question is from Angela Deesh. I downloaded the spreadsheet, but it immediately gave a runtime error, 53 file not found. is the only option, user 32 DLL end is the only option. So I selected end and entered the responsible party information, but it will not save or inserted the entered information into the sheet.
Yeah, so that issue is coming up because you downloaded the CPRT onto a Mac. It should work for newer Macs. We weren't able to test that too much. So we definitely prefer you use a Windows system here. But if you continue having issues after you've tried a different system, or if you don't have one available, just reach out to us and we can help you out.
The next question is from Lisa McClellan. If the product contains a proprietary component and some components are provided, do you list what is known and then provide the supplier information to CARB to request the remainder from the supplier?
So in a special case like this, where there's proprietary components but only partial are known, I would go ahead and reach out to us so we can work with you to come up with a good solution for that. Because we probably won't just want partial, but there may be an option, for example, to just provide the more generic top level of the ingredient, or we'll figure out how we want to split up the smaller portions of the component. So just reach out to us if you have a special case like that, please.
The next question is from Rachel M. If a primary company has multiple divisions, how should we list all of the divisions?
So the division field, you could actually just enter in all the divisions into that one field if you'd like. You can also alternatively just put one division there, and then in the comment box, you could list the other divisions there. Either way, we'll be able to see that information if you wish to provide it.
The next question is from Anonymous. If we have products only varying in dye, do we have to submit all the labels for the whole product line?
It depends on the makeup of the dye. You're gonna have to refer to our instructions to see what criteria needs to be met in order to repeat formula names and therefore reuse labels. So depending on the variants, you may be able to just submit one label for the whole product line, but I'll say it depends, depending on the makeup of the dye.
The next question from Anonymous. To what % do we have to disclose of information, especially when some ingredients could be unintentionally added or are used at levels below what would be required for disclosure on a safety data sheet? So for example, 1% for hazardous 0.1% for carcinogen. Do you have a term on the form for general additives to aggregate some of these ingredients?
Yeah, so this kind of refers back to a question earlier about like unintended ingredients and what % range we're looking for. So again, built into the tool, you don't need to report like unintended, really small quantities of ingredients. You can find that information in the instruction sheet in more detail. But we don't have like a general term for general additives, but we do have other aggregated buckets that you can use, which those general additives you're referring to may apply to those aggregates. So please refer to the instructions and see if it applies to you. If it still feels a little unsure, you can reach out to us and we can help see if that does apply to you or not.
The next question from Anonymous. If a product has a primary and secondary label, do you want all product labeling? So primary front, back, and secondary front, back, side panels. I would say generally yes, especially if these side panels are making separate claims than the primary label. Next question from Anonymous. Does the formula have to match ingredient lists on the label?
So I'll say generally, yes, it should be matching. There's not a hard rule about this in the case where like you're using aggregate ingredients. So if you feel that there is a large enough discrepancy between the two, just reach out to us when you're filling out your survey and we'll help determine if what you're submitting complies or not.
The next one's a clarifier to that question.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's,
Just go ahead.
so to clarify, are the ingredients for the formulations that we report only for intentionally added ingredients? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they are. The next question from Anonymous, can you clarify the definition for the body washes, hand and body moisturizers? Does that only include body and hand application or also the face washes and face moisturizers? So I believe face washes and face moisturizers are actually a separate category entirely. And we are not surveying them in this case. Body washes and hand and body moisturizers are only meant to be applied to your body and your hands. There was an error from the last webinar where I misspoke and said, yes, face products would be included. And just to clarify, that is not the case. It's only hand and body that are applied to these categories. So the next question from Anonymous, will the hydrocarbon solvent manufacturer information need to be submitted by the January 14th deadline?
So no, it's only going to be the product formulator information we're seeking here. The January 14th deadline is only for those who are being surveyed. So the CPRT and the CPRTF, so the responsible parties and their product formulators. Other secondary formulators like fragrance formulator and solvent manufacturer are not being surveyed, and we do not need their contact information ahead of time.
The next question is from Ann Hawley. Do we need to get a standardized formula name from our formulator so that the requests from multiple responsible parties are grouped together? Is the formulator able to change the formula name once it comes to them to complete?
So the formulator can't change the formula name once it comes to them. So in a case like that, it would be good to communicate with them to get an idea of what it may look like for them. That's a really great question. But if you have any issues while working on the survey, just please reach out to us, and then the formulators can do the same as well, and we can resolve that.
Next question from Anonymous. How is the calculation done for units sold in California if data is not available at state level?
So there's many fields that we didn't get to cover in the webinar, but one of the fields on the responsible party page gives a few options. Oh, Gracie's bringing it up right now. Let's see. Where is it? Let's see, I think it might be on the first page, Gracie, the company tab. Or sorry, not the company. It's on the product list page. I was like, it's not on the responsible party. Yeah, the sales data method. Sorry, that drop down there has a couple different options. So like, for example, if you're prorating national sales, you'll have an option there. But if something doesn't meet your needs, just please let us know and we can fix it for you.
Can I also add that Appendix G, which is on our listed in our resources, has US resident population data. So if you are using like regional data or national data, there's information there that would be helpful. There's also an equation at the bottom of, again, Appendix G that you can look at there.
Next question from Tom Green. Will this data become public record and searchable so that it can help us do our ARE reports in the future? So we will end up doing a data summary, but it will not be available to individually search through a company's information. The data summary will just be totals, and that will be after we complete the survey. Next question from Anonymous. If you are the responsible party and have the formulation which you get from a formulator, can you still have the formulator submit the formulas, or will the responsible party have to provide that?
So if you have the formulation yourself, even though you have a product formulator, you can submit it yourself. You can optionally also proceed by listing the product formulator and go through the CPRTF. If you run into that issue, then you can also provide comments in the tool just to notify us. But in that case, you can optionally report it either way.
The next question from Anonymous, when reporting the formula, is it expected that each ingredient and percentage be submitted, or are there grouped categories so each ingredient does not need to be entered and percentage disclosed? Are there specific ingredients that need to be disclosed, such as ethanol?
So I'll say yes, you do need to report each ingredient, but there are also some grouped categories, some aggregated terms. Please refer to our instructions because there are detailed rules on the aggregation of chemicals. And for example, there's some inorganics that we ask that don't be grouped, like water, for example.
The next question from Tom Green. How do we find out about the next meeting in January that was announced at the end of the slides? I'll let my colleague Gracie Wong take this one.
Yeah, so thanks for your interest. I would subscribe to our listserv, which is on the screen here. You can go to that link and we will send out an announcement when it's ready.
The next question from Anonymous. Regarding product labels, is it per product or per product size UPC? Many products come in different sizes. I'd say so long as they have the same formula, you can use a representative product label. The next question from Anonymous. For the fragrance formulator and solvent manufacturer worksheets, if the suppliers are not in the US, how should we enter them as a country is not in the address field?
So there's a couple workarounds for that. Like for example, you could put the country in the state field and then maybe just leave a comment to us, just letting us know. But if you have any issues with that, just reach out to us. But again, there's some workarounds for that. And it shouldn't be too big of an issue if you reach out to us, and then we'll just help you fill out the country information in that case.
Next question from Anonymous. We reached out previously asking for definitions for the new categories. The response was essentially they're new, so there is no definition yet. Will you be providing official definitions for the categories that are not already defined within the regulation?
We have basically two types of definitions. We have regulatory definitions for categories that were regulated. Sometimes those regulatory definitions include specific exemptions, and the exemptions are default exempt related categories, and there is, in some cases, detail, so it's implicitly defined. But then a great number of categories have never been regulated, and we only have the survey names, the survey category names. So unfortunately, a great number of categories are simply survey categories, and that's part of the history of this program. Regulatory definitions developed over time if we start looking into a category to regulate it. So it may be difficult to decide if certain products may belong to survey categories if there is no regulatory definition. So we encourage the respondents to use your expert opinion in deciding whether your products fall within any of the 2023 survey categories that don't have a regulatory definition. So we encourage you to err on the side of reporting products when they're uncertain, when you're uncertain whether they belong to a survey category, because we will conduct QA/QC of the reported data to determine correct categorization by reviewing submitted product labels, and we will remove or recategorize inappropriately categorized products by respondents. And subsequently, we will also perform categorization consistency checks for all products within a category. And finally, we will publish data summaries of tabulated company names and products for all survey categories. And we'll be looking forward for your review and feedback.
Thank you, Kyriakis. So the next question is from Anonymous. Does the category household and institutional products include automotive or automotive care products? There is a separate category that seems to be specifically for automotive products, vehicle and marine vessel aftermarket products. So I believe what you're referring to here, household and institutional products, that is actually a whole sector of categories. And yes, there is a separate sector for automotive products. The next question from Anonymous. To clarify on a previous question, are you saying that labels are not needed for every formulation? I understand that multiple labels are not needed for a single formulation that might come in different package sizes, but your answer previously sounded like some formulations will not need label files at all.
So this is a great question. It's more so that each product has a formulation, but if it shares that formulation with another product, then the formulation may only need to be listed once, depending on the criteria. Each formulation listed, so every formulation, every formula name listed on the product list page will need a label file. But like in the example that Gracie's highlighting, you can see formula example 1 is repeated 3 times for 3 different products, and they only need 1 label file. So it's the same information repeated for those first 3 rows, and so on and so forth. But if you have any issues, again, just reach out to us and we'll help resolve those cases for you.
Next question from Anonymous. How do we address label file name if front and back labels are in 2 different files?
So we're actually asking you to combine them into 1 file. So it will just be 1 label file per product. Or sorry, per formula. I don't want to confuse again after just answering that question. But yeah, it's just going to be all the labels or all the front and backs combined into 1 label file.
Next question from Anonymous. If there are multiple suppliers for hydrocarbon solvents, is there a way to list all of them?
So I'll say in cases like this, you can go ahead and reach out to us because I think we're going to have a little bit more discussion on this topic. There's a couple workarounds, but there's some things we may want to consider here. So if that is an issue for you, please just reach out to us and we'll help resolve that.
Next question is, are you stating it's mandatory for us to contact formulators by January 14th, or is this just a request?
It's more of a request, and it just would really help us out on getting the ball rolling for the survey. So we do appreciate as many people achieving that as possible. We know in all cases it won't be, but we do anticipate that this will help both product formulators and responsible parties.
Next question, how do I enter in ingredients with multiple CAS numbers or ingredients that the supplier does not disclose the chemical components for?
So you can go ahead and reach out to us if you have like specific issues with reporting. The tool should be able to handle most of these instances, but when looking at specific examples, it'll be helpful if we get on an actual call when you're filling out with your CARB staff that's been assigned to you.
The next question is, how are kits to be addressed?
So kits are detailed further in the instructions. They're going to be similar to last time. So if you have a kit, you can apply the same UPC number for that kit to all the products in the kit. But it's pretty lengthy in the instructions. So I would refer you to those. And then if you have further questions, just reach out to us.
The next question is, when the responsible party wants to designate a product formulator, can they designate a consultant who has the full formula instead of the contact manufacturer formulator?
Yeah, this is actually great because what the information we're requesting on the product formulator page is the company name of the formulator. And then we just need a first and last name and an email address. So you can list the consultant there. If the consultant doesn't work at that company, please reach out to us and we can include that information, or you could even include it in a comment field. But basically we just need to know the company name, and then we need a contact where we can reach out to them.
The next question is from Marilyn Graham. Should the formulator be the same as the responsible party? This depends. If you are the formulator and you are listed on the label, then you're considered both the responsible party and the formulator. In most cases, that isn't the case. It's just responsible party, and there is another company that formulates the products, and there would be a separate formulator. But yeah, it is possible that you could be both. The next question from Anonymous: does the Excel spreadsheet that we download from the CPRT website work on Apple MacBooks? I cannot get it to work.
So again, I didn't get to test too much on newer MacBooks. If it's not working on MacBooks, then by default, it does work on Windows. I can look into that a little bit more, but I would definitely attempt to get your hands on a Windows machine for filling out this survey. But just reach out to us if you have any issues.
Next question: how are products with test data to be handled? Chemically curing sealants often have a significantly lower VOC when tested compared to a simple formula-based estimation.
So I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, basically the formulation will vary depending on a couple different factors. We are looking for the general formulation, though. We can't capture all possible different ranges for the product if it's really just one product. But this sounds like maybe a more complicated use case. So we would ask you to reach out to us and we can help you navigate through that.
Next question: how do we submit for products sold as part of a set containing more than one product?
So again, there's kit information available and also multi-pack information. Both of those fields are detailed more in the instructions, so I'll refer you there. They have a few more examples as well as to what kind of sets of products apply.
The next question from Anonymous: do creams used only for certain part of body or hand, for example, for a wound area, fall in scope of hand cream being surveyed? It would really depend on the claims on the label. I advise you send us an email with the product, so we could probably come to a better consensus than just a generic example. It'd be easier if we knew more about the product. Next question from Pani Jayusuriya: is leave-in conditioner excluded? Is it only the rinse-off conditioner?
I'll answer this. I would ask that you send us an email with the product again so we can take a look at it and determine if it's considered a conditioner or a hairstyling product.
Thank you, Gracie.
I can take this next one if you want. This next one, I just saw it ahead, so I'll go ahead and read it. It's saying I'm getting the following message when I click menu that one of the macros are not running. It says you've already enabled VBA macros in the Trust Center. So it's either the case that for whatever reason, the VBA macros didn't actually get enabled, or you need to unblock the file from being used. All of these things are detailed in our instructions, but if you have specific issues, just reach out to us and we'll resolve those for you.
The next question from Anonymous: are scalp scrubs included in the body wash mousse gel soap foam scrub category? Again, this is probably something that you should submit to us in email so we can get more details on the product to see whether it would be a part of this product category. Next question: does category 30404 include facial moisturizers? And the answer is no, it does not. Then we have a request from Harvey Rems to show slide 31 again. Thank you, Gracie. Next question, will you want every label size submitted for a given product or a single representative? And I believe we answered this already. A representative label would be fine. The next question, if a responsible party is entering information for all brands that they manufacture, can they submit one survey for all the brands or divisions, or do they need to submit a different survey for each brand?
I'm gonna say off the top of my head, I think you're fine just submitting one survey in that case, but please reach out to us just so we can double check and get a better idea of what your information looks like and make sure that that's handled appropriately.
Next question from Anonymous. This may be in the definitions, but can you clarify if hand sanitizer, for example, gel hand sanitizer, would fall under the category 30404 hand and body conditioner since it's not functioning as a lotion or cream moisturizer? So I believe it would not fall under category 30404, but it would fall under category 30211, which Gracie has highlighted for us. Antimicrobial dry hand wash or hand sanitizer. Next question from Anonymous. What are the products included in the survey for cosmetics companies? So all of the categories are listed on our webpage. Cosmetics are usually going to be the 3000s categories. So I believe we only have a couple. It looks like sunscreen, hair or body aerosol, and then body wash, mousse, gel, foam, scrub, and then also antiperspirant. And then hand and body conditioner, cream, lotion, or moisturizer. So typically something that the category starts with a 3 that would fall in sort of cosmetics or personal care at least. Next question, if there are reaction products created in manufacturing process, do we have to report both the initial raw materials and the end products after the reactions have occurred, or only the final product ingredients?
So I don't want to say something wrong here, but I believe we're only looking for the final intended ingredients based on the label. But just go ahead and reach out to us so we can give a closer look. I don't want to say anything necessarily incorrect there, but that's my current understanding.
Yes, we're interested in the final product ingredients, not the process ingredients.
Thanks, Kyriakis.
Yes, thank you, Kyriakis. Next question from Lisa McClellan. As a responsible party who has provided formulator company information to CARB, how will CARB address non-responses from formulators?
So for this, we would just be following the standard process in terms of trying all of our available avenues to contact them. And then if they're not responding, we would contact you and hopefully you could get in touch with them. But basically we'll try and do our best to make sure everyone submits on time.
The next question from Kelly Hess. Does the category 30602 conditioner without styling claims include products that are both shampoo and conditioners in one? So for this, I would submit to our Ask box with a bit more detail on the product. It's easier to see if we have like actual label claims to determine where it belongs. The next question, for the address, do you want the address on the label or do you prefer the US address if available?
We would prefer the address that the responsible party's headquarters is, if applicable. If you feel that there's any issues with it, maybe not painting an accurate picture of your survey, just reach out to us and we can help you determine which address is most appropriate. But again, it should just be the address for the responsible party.
So the next question, I understand that the new categories are survey categories only, but will you be releasing any guidelines or draft definition at all? Telling us to essentially take our best guess is unhelpful given the large scope of this survey.
I believe, oh, go ahead, Kyriakis.
Like we indicated before, regulatory definitions are very precise, but they come about in the history of this program. When we look into a category and we are going to regulate it, then the detailed definitions, including the exclusions that are bounding a definition, a regulatory definition, come into play. So please use common sense as far as the categories that are simply just survey category names. Try to err on the side of including some products if you are not sure. We will do QA/QC, and we will remove products that are not appropriately categorized. We'll give a chance to stakeholders to look at all the products. That's part of how this program develops regulatory definitions that are very detailed. Some of the regulatory definitions we have today were not in existence. They came into existence when we surveyed and we decided to take regulatory action. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyriakis.
Yeah, if I can add to that also, our program has been conducting surveys for a long time. We've conducted a great many number of surveys, and so this is routine. It's part of the survey process where responsible parties do identify their categories, and this has not turned out to be a problem for us. We're able to work with responsible parties, and the process works really well.
So sorry, you may see us all looking around. There's creaking going on in the room, so we're just making sure there's no earthquake or something.
I would like to say one more thing on the subject of those definitions. While we've said many times that we don't provide definitions to unregulated or all of the survey categories, we have provided headings and subheadings of the categories. So maybe just some guidance on reading our listed categories. Reportable product categories will never end in a 00 or multiple zeros. The products that we're looking for submissions from will have numbers at the end. Those multiple 0 or 00 categories that you see on the website or on the PDF in the appendices, those are the headings and the subheadings. So like in the case of just the first one here, our plastic pipe cement primer is what we're looking for, and that ends in the 15. It's in the adhesives under the adhesive sealants related products. So we don't give a definition for that category, but you can get a better understanding of what we're looking for by looking at its subcategory and overarching category name. And no, those aren't definitions, but they might help you determine what we're looking for.
Thank you, Dan. That's really helpful. And let me ask my team also, have we listed all the survey categories, not including those we're not, sorry, have we listed all categories, including those we're not surveying this time? Because if we have a list available, then people can look and that'll help them decide what's in and what's not in.
Yes, we do have a list from the 2015 data summary, but we can create a separate list of all the categories that we've surveyed before. So you can double check against what is and what is not included.
Yeah, we have provided a link and it's posted already on our website, the 2015 data summary. And it's also linked in the new technical memo we posted on how we did the VOC equivalency. But there was a slide that showed, the last slide, I believe, that Gracie showed, that listed all of today's categories. So Dan Garrett's comment was referring to, we have 7 sectors in consumer products, including aerosol coatings. Those are not survey categories. Survey categories are much more narrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyriakis. The next question from Anonymous, does the label name we enter have to match the zip file name exactly? So when you zip your files together, it'll be all of your label files into one compressed zip file. So you could name it whatever you want to call it, but those individual label files should match what you've listed in your survey.
Yeah, just to be clear there, the zip file is just one file. That name isn't a part of your survey. So it's just those individual ones.
Next question from Amanda Swanson. To clarify on an earlier question, are different package sizes considered to be a different product for reporting purposes? Yes.
Yes, so you will report all products. It's just that if they have the same formulation, so for example, products that vary in different sizes will have the same exact formulation. You can reuse the formulation there, but you do need to report all your products individually.
Next question. We potentially have thousands of front and back files that are separate. Is potentially undoable to combine all.
So again, there are a few ways you can save yourself some time by using representative labels. But we do appreciate that this is a lot of work, and we really appreciate everyone's efforts to try and get us these surveys submitted. So if you run into any issues, just please reach out to us. But again, there's a lot of ways you can save yourself some time there.
The next question, is there a maximum number of product categories that can be listed for one product? If one product label captures 4 categories, do we select the most restrictive or the most predominant use?
So it is determined by your product label. You can refer to the instructions a little bit more for this, but it should be the predominant use of the product and the label, the language on the label that determines which category is the most applicable and therefore the one that should be selected for the product. If you have any issues, though, of course, you should always reach out to us and we can help. We will be looking at the labels, so this will be resolved naturally throughout the survey as well.
The next question is a regulatory person. Can a responsible party be listed as the formulator of the product for product manufactured by the TPM?
I'm not quite sure I'm reading this one right. So if your question hasn't been answered yet by the other questions, just please send your question to us and we can help you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm understanding that one right either, but if it is asking what I think it is, not every responsible party will be using a formulator. Some of the responsible parties formulate their own products. So not in every case will the formulators need to be contacted. If you formulate in-house, you can enter all your data using the CPRT.
The next question, my company's IT disabled macros in Excel, so I can't use the tool. How do we handle this?
So in this case, you should go ahead and reach out to your IT department and let them know you want to use this tool, and they should be able to help you use it. In the past, we had other formats like a download and then running an application, which would also, in a lot of cases for a lot of companies, necessitate that IT get involved. So just reach out to them and work with them first. And then if there's any issues, reach out to us. But they should be able to help you resolve anything regarding that.
The next question is, I'm still not clear, are you asking us to submit every UPC sold in California, even if many of them are the same product name formula and just vary by bottle configuration?
Yep, we're asking for that in the sales information. It's just that the formulation, so the ingredient makeup and the label file as well can be reused. So you do have to give us the name of the product and the formulation of it. But if the formulation is the same, then you can save yourself a lot of time by just using the one formulation.
Next question from Elena Baduzzi. Is reporting required for general purpose degreasers that are labeled for use in the manufacturing process only? Also, is reporting required for products that fall into a survey category but are labeled not for sale in California?
I can answer the second part at least. If it wasn't sold in California, then you wouldn't need to report it. But double check and make sure. For the first part, if anyone wants to address that.
For the first part, please email that question to us and we will get back to you.
And then just real quick, let's see. Hold on. Actually, sorry, forgive me. Never mind. Go ahead, Lucy.
Oh, sure. Next question, do the subcategories under category 2000 household and institutional products, such as 20100 air fresheners, 20300 cleaners and degreasers, 21000 miscellaneous household products, 21300 shoe and leather care products, leather care part apply to automotive or automotive care products? No, they do not. These are all subsectors, so they're not actual product categories. The 2000 household and institutional products is the main sector, and then all the other categories listed here are not product categories, they're subsectors. Next question is, this is a follow-up about the labels matching the formula. Is it acceptable if the labels don't list all of the formula ingredients, because we are only required to list the top 5 ingredients and hazardous ingredients? Yes, that's fine. This is the next question from Anonymous. So the chemically curing sealings question, I was not asking about formula variations. I was more raising a concern that if CARB is using the formula data to determine a product VOC, it could be inaccurate. For example, let's say there's a product that when you calculate based on the formula has a VOC of 20%, but there is test data for said product that shows the actual VOC is only 1.5%. Wouldn't this difference between estimation versus test data be relevant for CARB?
So since there's so many products being surveyed, there's always bound to be some margin of difference between what's reported, what's received, and what is finalized in our data summaries. But as Kyriakis mentioned before, and Gracie, there will be data summaries released, which will be available to the public, where more of these concerns can be brought up and we can look into them.
The next question, does the sunscreens category account for lip balms that contain sunscreens as well, or just sunscreens meant for the body? I will ask that you go ahead and send that into our inbox with more details on what this lip balm is. Next question from Harvey Rems. Does the dye category include hair dye products or fabric dye products? So that would be for hair dye. Next question, are products in wet wipe formats included? Yes. Next question, if a responsible party discontinued a specific product which was sold in California in 2023, does the responsible party go ahead and report the product, or do we not report? If it was sold in California in 2023, please report it. Next question, do cosmetic formulators have to report the following categories for this survey?
Okay, the next question has the full list.
Yes, so it's 3,000 personal care products, 3,100 antiperspirants and deodorants. Both of those are sectors, subsectors. Everything that ends in an actual number and doesn't end in a zero, that is a product category that you have to report. The rest that ends in either a double zero or multiple zeros, those are sectors or subsectors and are not to be reported. It's just to clarify what some of these product categories belong to. For example, dyes, like the previous question noted, that could be either fabric dye or hair dye. And so we've just inserted those headings and subheadings just as a way to distinguish those product categories. And then we have one more question. What if there is no product category for the product I am selling in California?
I'd say for a case like that, reach out to us just in case. It may be the case that you need to fill out the survey, but if your product is far enough away from the categories we're requesting, there may be no action necessary on your part. So go ahead and reach out to us.
Okay, so at this time, I do not see any other questions.
Oh, one more just came in
you.
regarding sunscreens. Is this only meant specifically for aerosols? It says
Yes.
aerosols, yes.
Yeah.
So just the aerosol form of those sunscreens.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So thank you for attending this webinar. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us at the survey help box. And thank you for your time.